A very good welcome back to the Great British Breakfast. What time?
A good morning, a good welcome.
A good welcome. Hello, it's Monday. It's Monday. I'm just gearing into the week. It's just after 7:30 in the morning. Now, homes, roads and hospitals were flooded as storms battered England's south coast over the weekend, indeed right up to the capital. East London's Whipps Cross and Newham hospitals were urged patients to use other A&Es for urgent care as hospitals were redirected because of, as you can see, these frankly awful conditions with floods on many parts of the roads across southern England. Some kids, though, did manage to have some fun as well. But big disruption, mainly to transport networks. We saw, I think, 8 London Underground networks closed, including a DLR line, essentially one of their stations flooded. And then what looks like a kind of geyser here, bizarrely in some part of London, with water spewing up. And lots of this water also coming from the sewer network, so not particularly pleasant, really, at all. Well, Simon Crowther is a flooding expert and joins us in the studio. Good morning to you, Simon.
Good morning.
We did see an awful lot of rain yesterday. We're not really kind of able to cope. I mean, it was a lot of rain, but it wasn't an extreme amount in many regards. We're just not able to cope. The infrastructure doesn't seem to be able to cope.
Yeah, and I think as public, we find it really hard to actually expect what's coming. So we had really nice weather, and you then get a flood warning, and you can't imagine that when you've got such good sunshine that all of a sudden the following day there's going to be extreme storms. I read that in some areas there was 80 millimetres of rain in a day, which is a lot, and they had 50 millimetres within an hour. My family home was actually flooded back in 2007, and when we flooded then, we had 50 millimetres of rain in the day. So it was a similar sort of scale of event. But across London, we've paved over everything, we've built basements. There's very little area for the water to actually soak into the ground, which is why we're seeing such extreme surface water flooding. The sewer network is a combined sewer, so it deals with both foul and surface water. So it's not great when it then surcharges, because you've effectively got polluted water suddenly flushing out the sewers, overflowing into people's properties, homes, critical infrastructure.
Shops like Sainsbury's there as well, yeah. It's
so
really
when we
nasty.
saw that sort of, Darren described it as a geyser, what's happened? What's gone wrong, which meant that's been where the water's coming out and at that volume as well?
So the London sewer network was actually designed really well by the Victorians. It's designed in such a way that if there's too much rainfall, the sewer network automatically discharges any excess into the Thames, which has worked really well until now, because it tends to stop the sewer network being overwhelmed. The problem with that is we're obviously then putting polluted water straight into the Thames, which isn't great. What I imagine is happening in that picture is actually one of the outlets potentially hitting an obstruction or a flap valve and just causing it to shoot up in the air. But I imagine that is one of the outlets, either for surface water or a combined sewer overflow. So
I was just going to say, so knowing that flooding is going to become more common, we think, but potentially particularly in the summer with heavy floods or showers of rain as our climate changes. I mean, what can we do? I mean, as you say, lots of our infrastructure network was designed and built by the Victorians. What can we do to kind of make things better, make us less exposed to these kind of extreme types of flooding?
We need a complete rethink about risk management. Flooding is thought of as an if. It might never happen. I think the reality is it's more of a when. But when you're looking at budgetary spend, councils need to spend their money day in, day out on things like having bins emptied. Flooding goes to the bottom of the pile. So alongside rethinking risk management, we need to stop trying to battle nature and actually work with it. If you're not part of the problem, part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So we're all paving over things. We need to be changing that and actually thinking about putting in green infrastructure, rain gardens, stuff that's slowing the flow of the water actually into the sewers and what's causing it to be overwhelmed and so extreme. Obviously, in a big city like London, there is such a vast expanse of paved area that it really needs a complete shift in strategy. I
mean, we've just been looking at pictures of Pudding Mill Lane station there in Stratford. I mean, it effectively looks like a swimming pool. We're not talking about, a few millimetres.
Yeah.
What do you do? How do you redesign the station? Or what needs to change that doesn't happen again?
I mean, it looks literally like a scene from Titanic, doesn't it? With the sort of
a horror movie type thing. It's awful.
Horrendous. There's a real risk there as well, as we saw in China with the, it's happening around the world, with actually a threat to life as well. If someone was trapped there, fast-flowing water like that could quite easily knock you off your feet. So I think we've got to change the way we have awareness of flooding. For instance, I've seen people in rubber rings out in the floodwater, and from what I know about floodwater, there's all sorts of contaminants in there. It's polluted. You could catch something like Weil's disease, which is really serious, hepatitis. So I think we need awareness about the dangers of floodwater for a start, better evacuation plans, and we've got to work within sort of the jigsaw of flood mitigation. So it's not just, for instance, that station has flood barriers to protect it. Whilst that would help, it's got to be a much wider strategy where we're all collaborating, looking to reduce CO2 emissions as well. There's not, unfortunately, a one quick fix. It really needs every one of us to be involved.
Well, we were always told that when we go to, which I've done reports on floods, never wade into them, because also you don't know that a manhole might have come up and actually you could fall into the drain, quite literally, because you don't know what's underfoot. If you're looking down at flood water, often you can't make out what's beneath you.
And just advice, if you've got any for people, I mean, you might be looking at that thinking, I don't care about that tube station, I care about my home.
Yeah.
What kind of very immediate measures can people do? So
I saw a lot yesterday of particularly basement flats having water surcharging through the toilet, which again is disgusting because, it's other people's foul water coming up through your toilet. Things like that can be defended against really easily with a non-return valve. So it's basically a flat valve, allows water to flow out in one direction but not back the other way. They're as little as £60. So for a basement flat to actually protect themselves against that would be a very good investment. So I think as part of that, people should check their flood risk as well. They can use the Environment Agency's free website to check their river flood risk and surface water flood risk.
Well, some good advice there. Simon, thank you very much indeed. Simon Crowther there. Talking about flooding this morning, and unfortunately, as I say, it's likely to become more common in the future as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
With us on the Great British Breakfast. Now,